This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellow Wall podcast.
Welcome to episode 470 of the Yellow Wall Pod. I'm your host, Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Wednesday's Champions League tie against PSV Eindhoven. To do that, I'm joined by the Eindhoven-based football analyst and writer for Managing Football and Football España, José Pérez. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hello, Stefan. Hello, everyone. Yes, so I talk usually what I specialized in is Spanish football. Then I moved to the Netherlands 4 years ago, and ever since I've been following a lot of Dutch football, and of course, especially PSV. I was there in the first leg. At this point I have a season club card, so I do go to every game I can. So.
Yeah, I mean, if I was living in Eindhoven, that's probably what I would do too, because football there is great to watch. The stadium is great. And I think we had you on before to talk about Real Madrid games, one of the 800 million matches in the last 10 or so years, to discuss that. But I'm psyched to talk Eindhoven with you. Obviously, the first game was a 1-0 draw, somewhat of a questionable penalty for Eindhoven. But nevertheless, I think based on performance, it was probably deserved. My takeaways were that Eindhoven is tactically the much better team than Dortmund. However, on a individual skill level, Dortmund are probably superior, and hence you get a draw. What were your takeaways from within the stadium?
Yes, well, first of all, my first takeaway from the stadium is that already just the small section of Dortmund away fans were louder than the rest of the stadium. So I am highly concerned of what happens when you put 80,000 of those in a stadium. So that will be a bit terrifying for the PSV players. That's from the stadium. Then I had going into this tie, I've had a very similar view to what you mentioned, that collectively, tactically, I find PSV to be the better team. They press in a more coordinated way. They have the ball in a more coordinated way, but individual talent makes the difference. And in the end, all that control of the game is not worth much if you don't have the firepower in the attack to turn that control into goals. And that's ultimately the issue that PSV has in this tie, that they actually turn that into goals? It's a bit difficult.
Yeah, I mean, just the basic stats pretty much tell that story. PSV had 55% possession, 80% passing accuracy to Dortmund 74, but 3 out of 13 shots on target, and one of them was of course a penalty. Meanwhile, Dortmund had 5 out of 8 on target. So at least from that, a bit more clinical. I mean, the expected goals, at least to FBref, is 1.6 to 0.9, which makes sense because Dortmund has a 0.9 literally in their logo, and PSV did get a penalty. So, but obviously, the goal that Dortmund did score, Daniel Malen with a very clinical strike. I'm not sure if it was slightly deflected or not. Might have been, but right now he managed to pretty much bang in every ball that is just somehow ahead of him. I mean, against Werder Bremen this weekend, he had a miraculous side volley that went through the keeper's legs. So he's just on an absolute tear. And hope, of course, is that he will once again provide the curse of the X against PSV. Meanwhile, Peter Busch, I think, will try to do the same, as he is a former Dortmund manager and knows the Westfalenstadion all too well, and how loud it can get. Now, I don't know how you think PSV are going to line up in this one. Do you expect a similar approach to the home tie, or considering that this is a away game, and obviously for both teams it's sort of a must win, so you can't just try to, I mean, you could sit on a 1-1 draw and hope to make it to the penalty shootout, but I don't think that's an approach Peter Busch would ever have. Now, from Eindhoven's players, I think the guy who struggled the most was, ironically, Lozano, just because he was in a lot of very good situations, very promising situations, good one-on-one player, but just never quite had the finishing touch. But I think in my book, he would probably be one of the first names on the team sheet, just based on that, knowing that with just a little bit more luck, he can probably be a difference maker for them.
Yes, that has been kind of the hope on Lozano the whole season, which hasn't fully materialized, to be honest. We've hoped, like sometimes I think we paid like 15 million for this guy. That's like 20% of our yearly revenue on this guy, 28 years old, gave him a 5-year contract. And I'm just hoping that MLS is willing to buy in a couple years if it doesn't work out. But I give him. I am a bit tough on Lozano because I think we expected at PSV we expected a bit more when he came back, and I talk to friends like Abel Mesaros, and he was saying like he was watching him at Napoli. And it's like he's not doing that badly. It's just some tactical things that he didn't play as much. And then I see him here, and he was not doing as well as I thought. So
he also looks very similar to Abel, I must say. There's a little bit of Abel in him. I don't know. Argentinian Abel.
So sometimes I feel like telling Abel is like, we got scammed here. But let's see. Let's hope that eventually like he gets better. Maybe this season took a bit of readaptation to his old club, but he will be like, regardless of performance, he will still be one of the first names on the team sheet. That's for sure. So I think, and like you mentioned, like for Peter Bosz, the whole play away, play home is not going to change the approach. He's not the kind of coach who's like, we're playing away, we're going to be more conservative. That's not Peter Bosz, and it's not good. Yeah. So the approach is still going to be try to have the ball, try to press, be aggressive, be intense. It's press high like that. Those things are not going to change. That's partly why PSV got 4 goals against Arsenal. Arsenal scored 4 past us that time because in the end he won't regulate the approach. Now, so for the starting lineup, the main changes looking at the lineup from the first leg, the main thing is that one of the starters in midfield, Ismail Saibari, he is still injured, and I think we still don't know if he's going to make it to the starting lineup. And the thing is that because he didn't play the previous game, there would be questions on whether he's fit to start. So I think
left midfield.
Yeah. So I think he's going to be the main change, because I think what's going to happen is that Malik Tillman is going to move to left midfield, and instead the other midfielder is going to be Hustil, who is kind of a more aggressive kind of aide, like the kind of guy who's a midfielder in name only. Like it's a striker who's nominally a midfielder, guy who runs in a lot. I think even against Dortmund, like he did a bit of damage with the run. So I think he's going to be the replacement in this case. And for the rest, I would expect the same lineup. So it would still be Walter Benitez at the keeper. Then center backs, you'd have this pairing of Boscagli, who's a regular one of the usual starting center backs, but then Yerdy Schouten, who's normally the defensive midfielder, but he's being played at center back because the other center back who normally plays there, Andre Ramalho, Bosz doesn't like how he has the ball. Let's just say that a lot of opponents have exploited him and have pressed him, and he's had trouble passing under pressure. So that's why Schouten in this case was moved back to center back for the first leg, and I think he will stay there for the second leg. Then fullbacks, Jordan Tese and Serginho Dest, who's having a very good season in Eindhoven this year. And then for the midfield trio, then I'm expecting Joey Veerman, who is still a bit of an injury doubt, but I have a feeling he's still gonna make it. Who's still on the right center midfield, Malik Tillman left, and then the front three, that would be Luke De Jong as the striker, Lozano on the left, and Johan Bakayoko on the right. So only one change, I would say, from the first leg.
Yeah. I'm really intrigued to see how PSV will play that in Dortmund and how ball dominant they are, because Dortmund, they just won 2 in a row, but they have sort of neglected their fans a little bit this season, let's say, because they have not played the best football. It's not very easy on the eye, first of all, but also it has they had some really terrible results. The last home match was a 3-2 loss to TSG Hoffenheim, and for Dortmund fans, it's obviously unacceptable. I presume in the Champions League, though, the atmosphere should be very supportive and very loud, and I do appreciate the rule change. I think it was a season ago, correct me if I'm wrong, that it was allowed for people to actually stand, so that raises the maximum crowd back from 65,000 to 80,000. On a European match day, and that's pretty cool. Obviously, it makes the whole stadium
nice.
even louder, to be honest. And I'm looking forward to that in itself. Of course, maybe there's going to be a nice Tifo to introduce that. Who knows? The next time Dortmund will be in the Champions League. Can't take those games for granted at all. I think Nico Schlotterbeck, center back, next to Mats Hummels, starting in the first leg, is out with a suspension. I think he picked up his 5th or 3rd yellow. I don't know what exactly the rules are, but either way, he will miss that game. So Niklas Zulu, who luckily is back from injury, will rotate into the starting lineup next to Mats Hummels, and that is basically the old Bayern Munich starting lineup from, I don't know, 3.5 years ago, something like that. So they have some chemistry. I'm not really concerned. The fullbacks will, of course, be Riasson and Martzen. And then in the midfield, I assume that Marcel Sabitzer, who picked up the red card against Bremen, will, of course, be back for the Champions League because he's not suspended there, next to Emre Can. And then I'm really intrigued who will fill in the number 10 spot. Marco Reus has not played in the last 2 games. I know he is one of your favorite players. However, currently he is not a starter, but maybe in a high-profile game like this, he might be over Julian Brandt, and otherwise I do expect Jadon Sancho, Daniel Malen, and Niklas Füllkrug to play, so I don't think there are going to be many surprises. So just 2 changes, obviously, because Gregor Kobel is also fit again, so he will replace Alexander Meyer in goal. So him and Schlotterbeck basically are the only changes. And other than that, I do believe that Dortmund might have some more jokers up their sleeves. Obviously, Julian Brandt or Marco Reus, whoever will play, will come off the bench. But also Karim Adeyemi, someone who I've mentioned previously, is a real difference maker in the Champions League, especially with his pace. And of course, Jamie Bino Gittens is also someone who can run really well at tired legs. I'm not sure if Terzic is inclined to bring Moukoko, who has not featured a lot recently, but certainly just in the attacking department, there are a lot of names that come to mind. And in midfield, Felix Metscher might also make an appearance, but I'm not entirely sure how far he is. He had a few minutes against Bremen, but that didn't look like much, to be honest, because Dortmund decided, after going down to 10 men at the beginning of the second half, or end of the first half rather, they would just play completely destructive and negative football, and so they really didn't create much, to be honest, after that. So I don't know how much I can judge Metscher off of that, but in general, Dortmund, I think, have gained a few players back and vital players. I think my main key player for this game, apart from Malen, of course, who is an absolute hot streak, might be Adeyemi, because he is someone that can also create a lot by himself, especially in the Champions League, and especially against a team that's coached by Peter Bosz, because they do afford you some space here and there. So, Jose, I'm really intrigued. How do you expect Dortmund to play this, and do you think they're still the favorites for this tie, betting odds aside, just from your eye test?
Yes, I think I still, like, going into this tie, I had Dortmund as the favorites. I basically expected a tie where PSV was going to outplay them throughout several phases of the tie, but in the end they weren't going to get the winning goal and I think we're on track for that, if I'm honest, because I'm not sure, like, already I think Eindhoven was the right place to try to do more damage to Dortmund because of the injuries that you mentioned, because always support from the home crowd is always a good help. And I think they didn't quite take the chance. I mean, especially, like, I think in the first half, there were 1-2 chances that really would have changed the whole tie if they had gone in. They did not go in. And I think that's gonna make the away leg difficult, because I don't think PSV is gonna change much from the first leg, but I do think Dortmund will. There will be improvements with the support from the home crowd. There will be improvements with the players coming back from injury. So if PSV didn't win that first leg, I find it difficult to think that that they could win the second one. But all in all, it's still going to be a fairly close game, and with many of the same pointers of the first leg. I also expect, well, in the first leg, Malen was to me the most damaging player from Dortmund. It's the player that did the most damage, because it was always like, what was tricky about him is that he has so much mobility that you never know which space he's going to show up in, and that was a lot of what PSV struggled, because especially in a team like PSV that's so aggressive in possession, like you said, they leave spaces, and Malen knew very well which spaces to attack, where to slip in, and he was definitely the player that did the most damage during the first leg. So I'd expect him to be decisive too in that one. And I think things that say Dortmund could improve compared to the first leg. I thought that the build-up, Dortmund's build-up phase struggles a lot in general. Like, they struggle to play out from the back. And I think against a good press like PSV, it was going to happen. And I think what was interesting is that you saw a lot, like, what I found very interesting about that game is how both teams kind of adjusted to each other. Like, PSV starts pressing, and then, say, Emre Can moves in between the center backs to help play out from the back. Then PSV adjusts to that. Then you even have, like, Madsen moving inside to help play out from the back, and then PSV reacts to that. And all of that created a game where, like, it was very difficult for Dortmund to play out of the back. So that's going to be one of the big things. Again, it's been a big issue for Dortmund throughout the season. Let's see if they can figure out some new solutions this time around. It would also be good if I think Madsen in the first leg struggled a bit during those possession sequences at first, and then once he had a bit more space in second half, I saw he had more space to run around and attack PSV. That can also be important. In general, I think it's important to find those, like, PSV is very aggressive at it, but if you can run at their defenders, you can get mistakes out of them. I mean, the weakest part about this PSV team is the defensive line, especially the center backs. Like, they struggle a bit more, like, winning duels against top attackers. And if Dortmund can get guys running at that defensive line, I think mistakes will happen and goals, or at least very good chances, will come.
Yeah, what I really observed is how easy it was in comparison to most other teams that Dortmund play, and how easy it was for the Füllkrugs, the Emre Cans, also the Sabitzers, whether it was Basaglia or Schouten or Fährmann. They all struggled, whether it was aerial challenges or just, trying to push your opponent off the ball, to really physically compete with Dortmund. And that's something that very rarely happens, because Dortmund aren't the most physical team. I mean, with Füllkrug and Can, you definitely have two players who cannot do that very well in comparison. And historically, Dortmund were probably a bit more lighter when it comes to the weight in midfield and up top. But nevertheless, that's something that I realize Dortmund definitely can exploit, just to impose their physicality on PSV, and there's very little they can do against that. So in possession, that is probably one of the the few remedies they have is that they can be pressed, but then not dispossessed. It's like just in Formula One, like catching is one thing, passing is another. That's a bit similar to how Dortmund can defeat PSV's press, because as you said, Dortmund do struggle to pass out the back. Now, there's one wrinkle that I should mention because I think it is relevant, especially when it comes to playing out the press, because usually when Schlotterbeck and Hummels play, Hummels plays on the right side and Schlotterbeck plays on the left side. But if it's Süle and Hummels plays on the left side because that is his preferred side historically. And so I think his build-up from the left side is a bit better. His diagonal passes is there are more often, and if Jadon Sancho plays on the left side predominantly during the game, there is some chemistry there that I believe we will see also, that Hummels will just find him every now and then, especially when it comes to making runs in behind the back line. This is something to watch out for. I think Dortmund will try to play relatively direct whenever they can, just because they don't really like to pass around the back, because they can't do it. So they want to skip the midfield as much as possible, I presume. So just wanted to mention that Ian Maatsen, of course, tucking to the inside was something that's been introduced, I think, right after the first match day of this season, or this half season rather, right after the Darmstadt game, I think, as soon as Heidenheim or Cologne, where he was already tucking inside to help with the build-up. Now, I know that Edin Terzic actually does not like for Emre Can to drop between the center backs, because he wants his numbers more in midfield, but the players not quite listen to him all the time. And also Emre Can, when he receives the ball in midfield, he often loses it just because he's not quick enough at turning around, maybe does not have the pitch awareness that's necessary to play a good number 6, which is of course very peeving for Dortmund fans, because it makes Dortmund's build-up very tedious. They just take a lot of time to move the ball around, because they have very little automatism, and they have to sort of step on the ball and look around, see what's going on. I assume that Dortmund will try to build more over the wings and the half spaces, and try to skip the very center. That's pretty much all I have on this game, honestly. I don't think there's much more I personally can say. But if you have any other thoughts on this tie going into a very important knockout match, be my guest.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that I think you were mentioning, like, for example, some players from Dortmund who could go in the second half as kind of impact substitutes. PSV does not have much of that, let's put it that way. And I think that's an important aspect coming into this tie, because in the end, I would say, like, before, I think in previous years there was a bit more quality off the bench. Right now, I look at the bench and there's really not too many players who can change things. Like, because we can put, say, Ricardo Pepi will probably be kind of the match changer there, but he hasn't been. Let's just say I haven't loved him whenever he comes in as a substitute. There's also like a very good young talent in Isaac Babadi, who just renewed his contract with PSV, one of the biggest Dutch talents. He is, let's just say, he's a player who kind of improved. Like, he's kind of a tricky number 10, good guy to receive in between the lines, but he doesn't have that much impact when it comes to like goals and assists. So he's not the kind of player who will get you that decisive goal and assist that you need in a Champions League night. He can help you keep the ball better, keep possession better, control the game a bit better. But that's the thing. I look at PSV's bench and I don't see that many players who could change things. So if PSV doesn't have an impact, say, in that first half, I just don't think they have much off the bench to change things in the second one.
Yeah, I'm also honestly thinking that this game will be a lot decided by the intangibles, to be honest, just because, we talked about the stadium atmosphere, but also if Dortmund have proven one thing this season, and it's funny that they can't do it in the Bundesliga likewise, but they have been very mature in the Champions League. They have played obviously a bit more conservative, but that's something you usually do in the Champions League. They have been very clinical overall, and they have not committed many errors and have not shown a lot of nerves. And I feel like especially younger teams, when they come to the Champions League, now granted, there's a lot of experience in PSV as well, but they do have a few young players there and also inexperienced players for whom this Westfalenstadion might be a bit more intimidating. So I do believe that from that standpoint, Dortmund will have an edge also. Now, obviously, you can very easily mitigate this edge by just playing well and scoring, but for some teams, you can feel it. They enter the Dortmund stadium and they are just a bit more intimidated than they should be, honestly, just by the stage. So I just honestly think that this is a game that Dortmund will narrowly win. But I also would not be surprised if they don't, because the way this Dortmund season is going, they are really a bag of surprises.
Yeah, I agree also with the assessment. To me, it's a narrow Dortmund win. PSV can have some good phases, like some player phases where they're playing well, but I also don't think they have the firepower, the experience, the composure to really take advantage of that. Because in the end, there's the difference in talent. Even if PSV plays better, it always, like, when you have that difference in talent, it always feels like you have to do more than the other team in order to earn that goal. And that's the thing. Like, I feel like PSV is going to need like 10 good shots in order to get one, while Dortmund can probably get that goal in 4 shots.
Yeah, especially if Daniel Malen is at the end of the chance right now. He rarely misses. Well, I'm excited for the game. It's really almost the only excitement Dortmund have left this season. And maybe then, of course, if they make if they advance in the Champions League, then that's obviously something to look forward to. But before one can dream, I think this is a very interesting and intriguing game to watch. I think it'll be a lot of fun too. I don't think it will be without any drama. That's very hard to believe. So I honestly can't wait. And of course, for both teams, a lot is at stake. I mean, just think about the money you earn when you make it to the next round. For PSV and for Dortmund, that's huge because I guess in theory PSV have an investor, right, with Philips, but it's not like they are the richest club on earth.
No. And each round, I think at this point, each round you go forward is like 10 million per round or something along those lines. So each of the like let's just say PSV don't make that much money. Each one of those 10 million is like 10% extra revenue, basically.
It really depends on who else is in your federation still playing. For example, for Dortmund, they get more money because Leipzig are already out. And such, but I think like 16 million or so, and then of course if you get a win, you get I think that's worth 3 million in itself. So a lot of money at stake, too, of course, which for Dortmund is very important because they once again have to rebuild next summer because this team is not greatly put together. Anyway, that's all I have. Do you have a prediction for this game?
So I'm going to put this at a Dortmund, let's not make it boring. Let's make it a 2-1, like not a 1-0. I have a feeling, actually, let's leave it at a 1-0. Yeah.
Okay. My honest prediction is a 3-1 to Dortmund. That's why I'm at right now. Even though Dortmund
we both see the win. Yes.
Dortmund do not score a lot of goals, so that's a bit of a bold prediction on my end. But I'm feeling good about this one, so it could go. That might be the final nail in the coffin, to be honest. But anyway, thank you so much for coming on. Do you have anything to plug?
Not for now. As these days, like, I write a bit about Spanish for like a monthly column about Spanish football for Fútbol España, so you can look. So that's one website, and I still do regular podcast appearances for Managing Madrid. So if people want to know more about like the latest news on Real Madrid and some analysis, we provide that. So those are the two main ones.
Yeah, there's certainly some intersectionality. I'm sure we have some Dortmund fans that also root for Real Madrid, so I'm sure that's appreciated. Either way, we will be back with another episode on Thursday evening, I would presume, then talking about the game against PSV and also a little bit more in depth about Werder Bremen. As always, thank you for listening and goodbye.